What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. We are back with what was going to be another prediction video, but obviously it's not going to be quite the same thing. Fiji-Scotland has been cancelled, so this was going to be the first game of round 3. So I thought what I'd do is I'm still going to chuck on the game, but I'm just going to have a bit more of a review of the Scotland-France game, talk about Scotland, how I thought they've got on in the tournament, and so on. So let's chuck on the game, and let's get into this sort of review about Scotland. Alrighty, we are playing as Fiji, so Jay Stone will get us kicked off, that very well licensed Fiji team that they don't have in Rugby 20. So the Fiji-Scotland game has already been called off. This was actually called off even before the last round was over. They had their whole 29 cases in the Fiji camp, so they were definitely not going to end up playing the France game originally, and then of course they've already had their game cancelled against Scotland, which means Scotland will get their bonus 5 points from that game. They'll win that 28-0, so Scotland actually still find themselves up there at the top of the table, but I don't know for how long that will be able to hang on for. We do have France versus Italy coming up, and that's going to be the game that decides who wins. We're still not really sure yet what's going to happen with that France-Italy game. I still believe it's meant to be that France will be putting on a bit of a B team due to their whole league restrictions they're doing. So Scotland are still in with a chance of actually being able to get to this final as long as Italy can turn up on the day. And to be honest, Italy did play very well in their first game against Scotland. So let's start with that Scotland-Italy game that was originally on. So that was a game I thought Scotland were going to come into and just demolish. They had a really good end to their Six Nations, playing Wales and managing to get a really good score in there, playing very competently. They had a good run of wins throughout the Six Nations, including beating France themselves. I think they were doing very well, and I thought they were going to go into that Italy game and absolutely smash it. A very professional Italy side turned up and wanted to play the game properly. Italy actually stayed in the lead in that game for 67 minutes, which feels just ridiculous. That's probably the best game I've seen them play, well, this year especially, but over the past few years has definitely improved an awful lot. Scotland, of course, had a couple of big players missing in the way of Adam Hastings and Finn Russell, so they were always going to be in a bit of trouble for this Autumn Nations Cup, but they've managed to do very well. Duncan Weir's come in and impressed, to be honest. His new hairdo has been giving him the power to be able to play very well. And he's grown an awful lot just in the couple of games I've seen him in. He's beginning to look very, very professional. He obviously would like to get back into that international jersey. He does offer a slightly different dimension to what Finn Russell and Adam Hastings do. He's not necessarily the biggest attacker of a fly half like those two, but I think he's done a very good job, and I think he'll be impressed with how his Autumn Nations Cup has gone. Scotland on the whole, though, for me, actually haven't impressed that much. It's been a bit of a team of individuals, I think, this Autumn Nations Cup, in my opinion. I think some people have been standout that were always going to stand out. You've got your Hamish Watsons. We didn't get to see an awful lot of Jamie Ritchie in that first game because he got knocked out or whatever in about 5 minutes into that game. There's some key players there. One of the big names that's come on for them is going to be Duhan van der Merwe. He had a really good game against Italy, which was very impressive, and sadly for him, he just wasn't able to shine an awful lot in that France game. He just couldn't get the ball to him, and anytime he did get the ball, he had about a metre's worth of room to work with. He's the sort of lad that likes a bit of a crash ball. He's not really a great stepper, he's just a power runner, and I don't think, given him the room that he had, was able to do an awful lot against France. But they turned up to that Italy game thinking they were going to win quite heavily, and Italy turned up and did very well. Scotland managed to turn it round, as Scotland do. They are a much more competitive side now than they were, say, 4 or 5 years ago, and they're now not looking to be that team that comes in 5th or 6th in the Six Nations, but actually to go on and beat some teams. I don't think they'll be enormously far away from looking at when they can begin to look at winning the Six Nations. I think they've still got a couple of years to slowly build up, but the youngsters that are coming into this team now for Scotland are looking better and better, and it gives them a longer period of time to be able to play for. They'll probably target this next World Cup actually as a good testing point to see how some of those players are getting on. They've got an awful lot of youngsters coming in who are playing very well, and I really hope they manage to pull it all together. So let's have a bit of a talk about the Scotland-France game. There was, it felt a little bit of a mishap for them. It wasn't their fault that the Fiji-France game got cancelled. They were basically almost going to be trainers to come in against a B-side France, and then a week before that happens, it all turned around, and suddenly Scotland are going up to face the same team almost verbatim that beat Ireland in the end of that Six Nations when Ireland were looking on top form. France are looking very, very strong. Sean Edwards, as their defence coach, has taught them so much. You can see as soon as France are on the pitch now, it is so hard to score points, so much so that Scotland could not manage to get across that whitewash at all. With all of their points having to come from the boot of Duncan Weir, it just begins to show how much France have come on, especially in terms of discipline. They really try to keep their penalty count down. It was obviously a little bit difficult, and Scotland are a very sort of niggly team. Ali Price was doing very, very well at managing to stand on any player in a ruck to pretend that he was getting tackled off the ball playing the 9. He did a great job in scrum half circles for some of that. I was very impressed. But Scotland are doing well, but the France team are looking exceptionally dominant. And in that game in particular, I didn't see Scotland looking like they were in real control at any point, which was a bit of a shame for them. I thought they were going to come and give France a really good game, and it was a good game of rugby. You could argue it was the best game of rugby out of the 3, really, as a viewer to actually watch. It was one of the sort of tighter games that everyone was really wanting to see. That was going to be the Conference B winner, really. But it's going to be a tough road for Scotland here, I think, after that game. There was a lot of little mistakes that I don't think they'll be happy with. One of which, of course, being Stuart Hogg's kick at the end, which just felt bizarre from such an experienced player, a team captain, someone who's well known for such a great ability from the boot. To just kick that ball. Well, I mean, he kicked it far, to be honest. He kicked it from like the halfway line, and it just happened to go into the dead ball area. They obviously knew they were going to struggle. France felt like they won every single scrum and maul, really. It became a huge power game for France in that one, and I don't think Scotland were going to be able to maul that over the line. Stuart Hogg obviously believed they needed to be as close to the try line as possible in order to give them the best chance of getting a try. To me, I would have completely implemented the backs. I think about half hour into that game, you saw Scotland were going to lose most of the scrums and most of the mauls. France have an insanely heavy pack, even when they made substitutions and took some of the big boys off. Camille Schat had a great game. He was everywhere, and I think they should have then begun to think we need to target playing some of our backs and trying to do a bit more of a running game. There was a lot of kicks in the game that I saw from Scotland, which felt like they were just for no reason. There was a couple of ones that Duncan Weir did where he quite literally caught the ball and just kicked it to a player. There wasn't even almost an attempt to go for grass, which I felt was a bit of a shame. They, rather than giving the attacking ball, they were just trying to get into the France half, and almost felt like they were just trying to find a way to get penalties. Maybe that was going to be their game plan. Maybe they knew the France weren't going to be super disciplined. You saw as soon as Horace came on that they were just targeting him, trying to wind him up, and all the French players just dragging him away. They knew he was bound to get a yellow card or something for throwing a punch. He obviously hadn't come on for a long time since he played that game against Jamie Ritchie. But I think they were just trying to play this penalty game, which I don't think was the right way. France came with attacking ball with a big team, a much bigger team than Scotland were probably ready to face at that point, and they did get outplayed to me. I was quite interested in the comments that were made after the match. Stuart Hogg actually said they felt they were really in control for the whole game, and it just slipped away from them, which I think I would disagree with. I don't think at any point I saw them particularly in control. If any of you guys disagree, make sure you drop down in the comments what you think of the game and how you thought Scotland's performance was. It wasn't a bad performance by any means, but to me, they just sort of lost that edge of control. I think France pretty much controlled what happened in the game, whether it was winning the scrums, getting turnover in scrums, their mauls. The France maul was driving, 20, 30 metres up the pitch, and Scotland really had no answer apart from just dragging it down and giving away more penalties. There were certain players they were really struggling to shut down. I thought Vakatawa had a great game. He could have got a hat-trick very easily in that game. Just little kicks through, not even a tough strategy to play with. I think Ficou did one, and I think Jalibert did the other. Just sort of kicking through the back line and no one really there, which felt unusual for Stuart Hogg to not manage to clear up some of them. Even the one where Vakatawa actually managed to get over the line and Stuart Hogg managed to try and get underneath him. But he seemed to be everywhere. I think France came in with a better game plan, and I think they dominated that game. And I think France are on a very good run of form, and I feel a little bit bad for Scotland because I think they were playing very well. Do I believe they would go on to beat England in the final? No. I don't think Scotland are quite there yet to turn up on the big tournament stages. Of course, they have those wins, and they're sort of sporadic wins. They had one a couple of years back. You remember they were down like 30 points against England, and they came back to be in the lead, and it ended as a draw, and it was hailed as like a fantastic game. And Scotland do have those games. They are a team of passion and drive rather than real sort of solid skill sets and they just play consistently. But it was a shame for them to lose out, especially the fact that they only lost by 7. I don't think it told a complete story of the match that they only lost by 7. I think France probably should have done a bit better. Of course, not having 2 of those tries from Vakatawa along with some questionable kicks to post or to corner. You didn't know what you're going to do. Ramos, I thought, had a great game for France. But Scotland on the whole, I think, have had a relatively decent tournament. I don't think they'll be particularly happy with it. I did see the emotion from Stuart Hogg. I couldn't really tell if that was because of his own mistake kick, whether he genuinely believed they should have won that game or whether they were thinking they were having a great tournament. In my opinion, they didn't have particularly the best game versus Italy, and then they didn't have... As they had a much better game against France than they had against Italy, but I don't think they were able to utilise certain players that they definitely should have. Van der Merwe should have been in that way more. Blair Kinghorn had a quite good defensive set. They just for some reason don't ever seem to want to give Blair Kinghorn the ball, even though he's a huge man and he's got a lot of power. And of course then Shaw Maitland came on. They also barely gave it to Shaw Maitland. I think they needed to look to the wings a little bit more in that game. But I think Scotland will take a lot of positives away from this, but I don't think they were there for it in that game. And as the tournament as a whole, they may go on to face in the final. If they go on to face England in the final, I don't fancy their chances too much, but it'll be an interesting one to see a France-England final, I think, potentially. But that's going to be it for me today, guys. It's going to be a shorter video today. It was just talking a little bit about Scotland. There's not a lot else to talk about. There was no team announced for this game. And, of course, we have nothing really to talk about Fiji. They just aren't playing in this. Maybe they'll come back in time for their game against Georgia in the final round. But who knows? I hope you've all enjoyed today, guys. If you have enjoyed, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel to keep up to date with all of our rugby videos. We do prediction videos on the channel and go through some of the team news. I hope you've all enjoyed, guys. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.